For centuries, cookbook authors, showbiz chefs, and of course the French have touted the virtues of cooking with alcohol. Now, more times than not, we're talking about a low-octane tipple, beer and wine, which is folded in for its subtle nuances. Other times, however, the booze gallops in full force. We're talking about distilled spirits, whiskey, vodka, or fortified wines like Marsala and brandy. In either case, maximizing the potion's potential contribution to cuisine requires clear understanding, careful consideration, and a conservative wrist. Join us, won't you, as we look at alcohol, hooch, booze as an ingredient. Is it just an excuse to lube up the cook, or is it truly There are many different bottles in the big bar containing many different flavors, prepared according to many different traditions. They have but one thing in common: alcohol. And if we are to cook with the contents therein, we're going to need to know a little bit more about this curious compound. The term alcohol, which comes from a very old Arab word for eyeshadow, go figure, refers to many members of a class of organic compounds bearing hydroxyl groups, that is oxygen and hydrogen hooked up to carbon. There are a mess of these things, and they're all toxic, okay? Now, this is a methyl alcohol, or a methanol, all right? One sip of this, and you go blind or drop dead, depending. Here, we have isopropyl, or rubbing alcohol, which is used as a drying agent and as a disinfectant used to torture children who have suffered a scrape or cut. Here, we have ethyl alcohol, or ethanol. Toxic, too, but not as toxic as most of the others, and relatively easy for the human machine to metabolize. Ethanol is a byproduct of fermentation. And by that, we mean, of course, the consumption of sugars by yeast, little unicellular critters that at this very moment are floating everywhere around us. If you're a fan of this program, you have certainly witnessed their rapacious routine time and time again. They consume sugar and give off gas, carbon dioxide, and ethanol, a trait that evolved specifically as a chemical weapon to kill off other microbial marauders who might want their chow. As I said, it's toxic stuff, even to the yeast that create them. The toxic effects of ethanol work on humans, too, by infiltrating cell membranes and wreaking mild to severe havoc with their normal functions. This havoc, of course, is manifested by a serious downgrade of social graces, table manners, and the ability to operate heavy machinery. Terrible. Now, if the yeast are allowed to consume the sugars in grapes or fruit juice, the resulting liquid is usually called wine. If, on the other hand, grains provide the caloric intake, then the fermented liquid would be called beer. Yes, other plant matter can be used for fermentation, but this particular one, I'm happy to say, will have to wait for its own show. Now, what's important about this discussion is that both wines and beers can be distilled to create higher alcohol beverages, such as brandy, vodka, scotch, and the like. Now, what exactly is distilling? Well, it has to do with our old friend ethanol, which is a very volatile little critter, meaning that he evaporates at a relatively low temperature, 78 degrees Celsius, in fact. It's about 176 Fahrenheit. Bye-bye. And that means that we can isolate it. But, of course, we have to have a still. Check it out. Pretty sweet, huh? I made it myself. Of course, I should probably point out that home distilling of spirits is highly illegal in the United States because, for one thing, it cuts into tax revenues. And the second thing, it's extremely dangerous, okay? So do not try this at home. It's strictly educational, okay? So some liquid containing ethanol, say wine, goes into the boiler. We then bring the liquid to 176 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, the ethanol evaporates, leaving the water behind. Granted, trace amounts of other extraordinarily nasty compounds evaporate along with the ethanol, which is why real moonshiners usually dump the first run anyway. All right, so if you maintain proper heat, the ethyl alcohol will concentrate here and then move up and into the condensation tube where it will change back from a vapor into a liquid form. Boom! Hooch! Now, if you did drink this and did not actually die or go blind, you would earn yourself a hangover that would make you wish you were dead. So typically this would be distilled again, maybe several times, and then filtered through charcoal to scrub out any impurities, which is generally the plan with top drawer vodkas, which are by definition colorless and odorless. If, however, you were making, say, Scotch whiskey or bourbon, you would leave some impurities called cogeners behind so they could mingle with the chemicals in the wooden barrels that you are no doubt going to be aging your beverage in. As for this, well, right now it's just paint thinner, and What the blazes?
All right, Brown. We know you're in there. We know what you're doing.
I'm conducting scientific experiments.
Sure you are. Now just put all the good stuff in the bucket and nobody gets hurt. Moonshiner.
I am not a moonshiner, and I respectfully decline to surrender my educational aids.
All right, keep it up, Brown. We'll see about that.
Bother.
Thanks for the ride, officer. Well, now that the matter of my bail's been settled, we can get back to our educational endeavor. Now, one of the fascinating, delicious, and potentially deadly, rather damaging attributes of ethanol is that it is flammable, a fact that has long been capitalized on in a class of dishes referred to fussily as flambés. Now, I want to say right up front that these dishes have rules. Here they are. 1, clear your airspace, meaning there can't be anything flammable up over the pan, like your eyebrows. Number 2, make sure that the heat source is turned off before the hooch goes in, okay? We don't want any surprise detonations or anything. Finally, have a tight-fitting lid standing by at all times. That's to douse the flames just in case there's trouble. There won't be. Let's cook. Shrimp and grits are on the menu. So a 4-quart saucepan goes onto the burner. 2 cups each water and whole milk go in, along with 1½ teaspoons of kosher salt. This will be brought to a boil, lidded over high heat. Then, whisk in 1 cup of grits. Down here in the South, grits means white hominy corn, but you could do this with coarse yellow cornmeal anywhere else in the country. But then, of course, that would be polenta now, wouldn't it? Now, drop the heat to low, add the cover, and cook for 15 to 20 minutes or until creamy. Well, it took 18½ minutes, but the grits look nice and creamy. So the heat goes off, and we melt in 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And you might as well grind on some pepper, too, about ½ teaspoon. There, nice. Now just stir until the butter is completely incorporated. Remember, corn, even dried corn, is an agricultural product, and every batch is going to be a little different than the one before, so cooking times inevitably will vary. Now, although it's not strictly required, I like cheese in my grits, at least when shrimp is concerned. So 4 ounces of the sharp stuff goes in. The lid goes on, and now we turn our attention to the shrimp. High heat, a 10-inch nonstick pan. When it's been on the heat for about 45 seconds, water will do that, and you'll know that you're ready to bring 1 pound of shrimp to the party. Shells off, but leave the tails on. You'll need those later. About a heavy pinch of salt, and just toss until they are just turning opaque. There. Now, turn the heat off and pour in 2 ounces of bourbon whiskey. Ignite and return the heat to medium. Now, let's talk about what's actually going on here, okay? Rest assured, the shrimp themselves are not on fire, okay? And technically speaking, the booze is not on fire either. What is burning, however, are the alcohol fumes. And creating alcohol fumes is a factor, well, of heat and also of proof. The concept of proof as it relates to alcohol comes from the ancient practice of proofing an alcohol by mixing it with black powder, gunpowder, and then lighting it. Now, any liquid that is at least 40% ABV, that's alcohol by volume, will indeed light. But you can learn a lot about that liquid by how it burns, the color of the flame, the length of the burn, and whatnot. So here we have a liquid that is 95% alcohol. We will put that on sample number 1. The next one is 75.9% alcohol by volume. That'll go right here. And then just for kicks, sample number 3 will get a measly 16% alcohol by volume. So we know that that one is not going to burn. It is, however, good in martinis. So we will don our safety gear and I guess I should say, don't do this at home. We are professionals. So, sample number 1, lights, and first we see the alcohol burn, and the alcohol burns on 2, darker blue flame, and number 3, well, gosh darn it, it doesn't do anything at all, which doesn't surprise. Now, looking at these two, we can tell that this alcohol is, well, liquor is more alcohol by volume because it is burning higher, brighter, and it's already starting to burn down into the gunpowder, which is definitely going to go. There goes the gunpowder on sample 1. Sure enough, a lot of alcohol in there. This one's taking its time. The longer it takes to actually light the gunpowder, the lower the alcohol by volume. Now, do you actually need to do this at home? Well, of course you don't. All you need to know is that alcohol by volume, when doubled, becomes proof. So, a liquor that says that it is 100 proof is 50% alcohol by volume. Now, in a flambe situation, I generally reach for an alcohol that is 80 proof, okay? That's 40% alcohol. Anything higher than that, it's really difficult and even dangerous to control the flame. Anything lower won't really flambe nicely. Now, the other factor besides proof is, of course, the level of heat, okay? If the liquid boils too quickly, you get this huge fireball that's over very, very quickly, and that doesn't do anything for the food. What you want to do is just maintain a boil, which is why I've got the heat back on medium, so I can maintain this flame for as long as possible, a minute if I possibly can, in order to do that. Why bother? Well, the flames are very, very hot, and they're actually searing the outside of the food and caramelizing some of the sugars inside of the bourbon. On top of that, I do want to cook out as much of the alcohol as possible while reducing that bourbon flavor, which goes very nicely with grits and shrimp. Thank you. Although this fabulous amalgam was once served strictly as breakfast fare in coastal South Carolina, as far as I'm concerned, shrimp and grits is perfect for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or even a midnight snack. All you have to do is trade out the beverage. Although they both contain ethanol, the differences between wine and spirits way outweigh the similarities, which is why wine and beer will have their own show. The exceptions are fortified wines such as port, sherry, and Madeira. Now, when the yeast fermenting these wines aren't quite done converting sugar from the grapes, the processor kills them off by adding a big dose of distilled spirits, which ups the alcohol level to the point that the yeast cannot survive. Now, the resulting beverage is quite strong, usually about 20% alcohol, and usually on the sweet side due to the residual sugars. Now, I am a fan of most fortified wines, but when it comes to cooking, I do have one particular favorite, which was invented in 1770 by an English wine merchant named John Woodhouse, working on the very un-English island of Sicily in a town called Marsala. Woodhouse discovered that by spiking a wine made with the local Criollo grapes with distilled grape spirits, he could create a strong yet sweet tipple that could survive long trips at sea down in the steamy holds of ships where most wine would go bad. Ethanol, after all, is a powerful preservative. Marsala comes in 3 colors: oro, gold; ambra, amber; and rubino, ruby. And in 3 levels of sweetness: secco, which is dry; semi-secco; and sweet. A lot like champagne. Now, due to its balanced flavor, golden glow, complex aroma, balanced acid and alcohol, the sweet ambra, or amber Marsala, is especially well suited to desserts, including my favorite on-the-fly dessert of all time, zabaione, which is, as far as I'm concerned, reason enough to keep Marsala close at hand. No one is really sure where the boozy egg foam that Italians call zabaione and the French call sabayon came from. But most food historians point to the Medici court of Florence, which, of course, is where all Italians point when they don't know something about where their food came from, kind of the way Americans point to Thomas Jefferson, who I feel certain did not invent zabaione, or French fries for that matter. What we do know is that it's based on ancient egg-thickened drinks called coddles, which were originally meant to comfort the sick and infirm. It's where we get the word coddled, as in, don't coddle that boy. The parts list is deceptively simple. 6 egg yolks, half a cup of sugar, half a cup of the aforementioned Marsala, and a wee little pinch of kosher salt. First step, 1 inch of water goes into a 4-quart saucepan. Put that over high heat, bring to a boil. Now, speaking of boiling, we're going to need a double boiler. And typically I would reach for a metal bowl, but a little insulation wouldn't hurt here. So I'm going to go with a very, very large heat-proof glass mixing bowl. The sugar goes in, the egg yolks go in, and we need to whisk them. I like to use a power mixer for this. Certainly will make the job a whole lot faster. You're going to basically cream that until you reach a ribbon stage. Then sprinkle in the salt. See that little pattern? That's perfect. Now the marsala comes very slowly or it'll splatter all over the place. Once that is fully emulsified in and looks like a nice thick salad dressing, you can go to the heat. But you've got to remember to turn that down to low. You want to maintain a bare simmer and continue to beat that mixture without ceasing until it reaches between 145 and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to take about 15 minutes. When you hit that temperature, you're going to want to get off the heat as soon as possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present Zabaglione. Mounded up nice and warm in a wine goblet over some berries. It is perhaps the most aromatic dessert on earth, thanks to the ethanol, which, being highly volatile, especially at warm temperatures, goes straight up the old smokestack where, oddly enough, we do most of our serious tasting. It is elegant, it is delicious, it is fast, it is easy, and therefore qualifies as good eats. Oh, did you think this was for you? No. It is perhaps logical that if ethanol is going to have a very low boiling point, it might also have a very low freezing point. And it does. Matter of fact, 114 below zero centigrade. That's minus 172.3 Fahrenheit, which is why it can be used like culinary antifreeze. For instance, if you were to stir just 1 cup of cream into our entire batch of Zabaglione, chill in the refrigerator for a couple of hours, and then turn in your favorite ice cream machine, you'd have something like this. A delicious soft serve cone with a kick. Why? Because alcohol not only lowers the overall freezing temperature of the mixture, it impedes the growth of big, nasty, crunchy ice crystals, which is why we almost always add a small amount, even just a tablespoon of, say, vodka to a quart of sorbet or ice cream mix, just to keep it soft. But wait, there's even more magic up ethanol's sleeve. Burn. Remember our oh-so-volatile ethanol molecule? Well, if you could catch and closely examine it, you'd see that part of its atomic arrangement bonds very easily with water. One end, however, is different structurally and binds quite efficiently with fatty acids, like this one we have before us. Now, that means that ethanol is a solvent capable of extracting flavor compounds that H2O alone simply cannot touch, which is why it's used to make things like vanilla extract. We can also use it to extract the oils from, say, the microscopic glands at the surface of a very popular citrus fruit. Let's conduct an experiment, shall we? All right, step 1 in our extraction experiment. Remove the zest only from 2 pounds. That's 8 to 10 standard lemons, like these Eurekas. Now, I just want the zest, not the pith, so I'm going to use a micro grater. And always be sure that you check underneath the grater for some zest. Move that into a large, clean glass jar. And, of course, you need to repeat with the rest of the lemons. Won't make you watch that. Then pour on 1 full 750 milliliter bottle of vodka, 100 proof. Lid it up, shake it up, and, about those lemons. You should juice those, make lemonade or something. As for the infusion, that will go into a quiet, cool place for 7 days. I happen to have one already ready. Once that 7 days is up, the zest will have given up all of its possible goodness, so it's time to strain it out. And I just go right back into the vodka bottle with a funnel and just a little hand sieve to help out. Just put that right there and pour on the goodness. Once that is done, it will be time to build yourself a syrup. So a small saucepan goes over high heat, and 2/3 of a cup of both water and sugar will be dissolved. There you go. Just whisk until it is thoroughly dissolved. That's not quite right. That's exactly what you want to see. Once that cools, put that into a jar and then pour your infused vodka on top of that. There you go.
You can now lid up your junior limoncello and move that into a freezer to age for at least 4 hours before serving ice cold. I don't like to ever run out of limoncello, and it'll keep here for up to a year if it lasts that long. Those of you who have spent time around Sorrento, Italy, will no doubt recognize this as limoncello, the absolute essence of lemon in beverage form, and a fine testament to the solvent powers of alcohol. Now, the luxurious body of this drink does come in part from sugar, but also keep in mind that when alcohol and water come together, some of their molecules hook up, forming a more viscous beverage than either could form on their own. Just thought you should know. Well, I hope that we've inspired you to make a culinary buddy of alcohol, aka ethanol. When used responsibly, it is capable of unique feats, from flashes in the pan to aromatic foams to heavenly extracts and beyond. Of course, beyond will have to wait for another episode of Good Eats. See you next time.